Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for spending your time with me. So many podcasts you could listen to, and I'm really happy that you are here, whether it's your first time or you're here all the time. Thank you. All right, today we're getting into goal setting for 2024. I love goal setting. I love New Year's. I love all of this. I love the energy of it. I love that this year, I'm double guessing it as I say it, but I'm pretty confident that we start actually New Year's on a Monday. Pretty sure that's true. Because I was like, oh, wow, that's exciting. It's also the start of week. So I am just going to walk you through, and I have other episodes from previous years. You can go back and listen to what my goals were for those different years or various goal setting tips. But hopefully, this is a little bit different, a little bit of recap maybe for some of you, but I don't know about you. I like to revisit it every year anyway. So I'm going to kind of go through the steps that I think are important and that I like. There's so many methods to doing this. I've tried different ones. There have been, I've listened to podcasts where people have done it in 7 categories and they've given everything a number first and blah, blah, blah. I'll get into that and kind of just tell you what I do. And then you can take what you want, leave the rest, just like I do from other people's podcasts and methods that I've listened to. So, first and foremost, I think it's really important to start with having some kind of reflection or recollection. And this is not a huge deal. Like, what I used to always do is go to adoration on New Year's Eve, like early New Year's Eve, not, when everybody's at a party, then I went to adoration. But I honestly, from however long I can remember, being 18, 17, whatever, driving myself to adoration at like 6 p.m. or something, and somewhere where there's perpetual, and sitting down, taking a second to kind of reflect on the past year and then set my goals for the next year. Now, I am recording this earlier than Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. And I don't always make it to adoration exactly on New Year's Eve. That's a great part of this that, I think bringing it to adoration at any other time would be awesome as well. But this year, I just took some quiet morning time. I really value and cherish that time. At the time of recording this, I've been in a really good groove with it because it's before the baby comes. And I think I just know how fleeting it is that I'm about 4 weeks out, hopefully, at the time of recording this. And I really do look forward to having that quiet time where I can wake up and it really is just me. The 2-year-old's pretty much, I'm confident when he's going to sleep until. So if I wake up early enough, I get that time. So I just sat in some quiet prayer and thought about, how things went last year. Asking the Lord to, like, what do you want this year to look like for me? This is where sometimes I kind of land on a word of the year. I didn't focus on that yet, I think, because we are so far out still from New Year's at the time of recording this. But last year, I was really focused on words like nurture and joy. Joy was a really big one for me all last year. I might have mentioned that in the 3 things that went well for me episode, but that was just something I really have been focusing on. So, anyways, I also did this, I will say, like in October. It was like end of October, beginning of November. I sat down when I realized it had been about a month of homeschooling, and it's, I've been quote unquote homeschooling from the beginning, but I have an actual first grader this year, which I know some of you have like a bunch of kids you're homeschooling, but I have a first grader and a preschooler and then a 2-year-old. But I sat down and wrote down, I mean, stay at home moms could do this too. Just anybody who's, I think it's good for anybody and working moms and stuff. But just for me, this was like the first month of kind of making of the school routine and whatnot, and doing it in this setup. And I sat down and just took that morning time to write down. And I wrote down, like, in a journal, what is going well in homeschool? Or in our days, what is not going well? What feels stressful? What does a good day look like? And that kind of thing. And it was really nice, instead of doing this at the end of the year, a month in, to be like, okay, this, and this are going really well. This, and this are not. Do I need to, like, come up with a different plan for them? Do I need to drop it off? Like, for example, I realized, like, my language aspirations for them are to learn Italian, which, if you've been with me too, has been an aspiration of mine. So I think I'm just trying to double whammy that. And to teach them sign language. And we've done the whole sign language thing since they were babies, alongside like what a lot of people do, the baby signs and this, that. But then I kept it going pretty well with Josh. I took just basic sign language in college, but I love it. I really think it's great to have, to be able to communicate with those who are hard of hearing. And it had come in handy for me at previous jobs and stuff where I was the only person who could at least do basic, if just some key phrases and you can finger spell, you can get pretty far with that. So, anyways, I had done this really well with Josh. And then as things go, you do like 900 things with your first kid and then things fall off. So, I really wanted to make that part of their like kind of curriculum or schedule or whatever this year. Anyways, sitting down reflecting, I was like, okay, morning time's going super well. We've been doing our catechesis, our couple other subjects there. They're all really into it. We've started incorporating some things too for my 2-year-old because I realized, like, hey, yeah, I don't do any fun songs with him or anything like. So our morning time's going super well, for example. However, a month in, we have not done one single thing for Italian or sign language. Like each week, when it came to something had to go, that was seen as an extra. We didn't fit it in, or I didn't have a plan. So whatever. So I had to walk through then, like, do I have a plan for this? Like, am I going to just cut it out because it's too much? Or am I going to take action steps to like make it happen? Like, what's going on? So it was really helpful for me to take that time to just even reflect on like what's going well and what's not. So some people, like I said, I had a planner like that this year, the Horatio planner, where it had you like shaded a pie chart for how well you think you're doing in various areas before you set your goals. And I listened to a podcast before. I don't remember her name. And I do not remember the podcaster. I tell you, it was like a couple years ago. But she suggested like there were 7 or 10 categories that we set goals in. And before setting a goal in them, to give yourself a number on a scale of 1 to 10 of how you felt in that area, like friends, like whatever. I think it's really helpful to take stock of where you are before you even make a plan for where you're going to go, because you need to know, like, if you're killing it, if you feel like you're killing it in one area, but one area is really down, maybe you're not even going to make new goals in the area that you're killing it in. If your health and fitness is super automated and you're just really happy to just keep rocking what you're doing, but you feel like your friend category could be a lot better, you don't make time for that, maybe this is the year you just keep things pretty automated on health and fitness. I know it's me, the trainer, saying that. And then, reaching out more in the friend department and worrying about that stuff more. So, it's very personal. I just encourage you to take stock of where you are first. So I went through personally my goals from last year, which I think I talked about on here, but like daily rosary, outside walks, those kinds of things, reading 23 books, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of reflected on what went well, what didn't, what I did achieve, what I didn't, because I could always put it on this year if I want to, if it's even applicable anymore, that kind of thing. So start with recollection. And then when you want to get into the next year's goals, I encourage you to pick some categories. And I have just 4 this year: spiritual, physical, personal. Oh, 5. I can't count. Oh, I think I didn't write down any personal yet. That's why. Spiritual, physical, personal, family, and business. Okay. So those are the 5 areas I pick. If you do not, work outside the home, maybe that's going to be just wrapped up in personal. I'm not saying again, like that's, oh, you're just a stay-at-home mom, but it means maybe you want to put things that you want to improve on in your work, your vocation, under personal instead. Or you could have a category that says, motherhood. That would be a great category. I don't have that on here. I kind of just rope those into personal or family. So I very much encourage you to only make 1 or 2 goals per category. Again, other people might say differently. When we have 5, 6, 7, I remember last year we did this. I talked about it on the podcast and we shared our goals in the Chasing Greatness group, which I would love to do again this year. So maybe this year we'll do that on Slack or in the Facebook group. And we did in the Facebook group last year. And there were still people who posted their goals and were like, I know this is too many, but this is my list. And it was like 7 things in each category. And I was like, oh man, like, woof, we are going for it. But for most of us, that's just going to lead to us like spinning our wheels really hard for 2 weeks and then dying out. Everybody's different. And I think that high goals are a good thing. So something we hear a lot is SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time measured, I think is the last one. I might have paraphrased some of those. And if you've never heard of this, there's some really good takeaways. You do want to be specific. You don't want to just say, if you have the goal of losing 50 pounds, which may or may not be a good goal for you, but we're not here to talk about that today. Say that is your goal, to lose 50 pounds. And then, well, see, that was even more specific than most people get. If your goal is just to lose weight, that is not specific. That's not attainable. Like, what weight, what this? If you say I want to lose 50 pounds by December 31st, then we can work with that. We can break that down into little goals each month and week and make a plan for it. It has to be specific. That is for sure. Now, the difference I've heard in the differing opinions about how realistic our goals should be is that some experts or whatever personal development people believe that you are playing it safe a lot of times if you're realistic. If you're like, I'm going to shoot for getting one workout in a week, that you are actually capable of like 3, 4, 5. And if you set loftier goals for yourself, you'd rise to the occasion and meet them. I kind of err on the side of this thinking. And we're going to talk about that in a couple weeks about leveling up and making sure you're pushing yourself. And I think because the culture tends right now, in my opinion, so much toward the take a break, leniency, you're doing your best kind of a vibe, I tend to push back with the like, no, like look to people who are doing, not necessarily more than you are, but like who are setting the bar high, like striving for excellence, essentially, right? Everything I say on my website and all our taglines, chasing greatness, made for greatness, the world offers you comfort. You were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. Pope Benedict XVI, all of that, we're like, we should not be settling for mediocrity. We should be striving for greatness. So it's a fine line. You don't want to set yourself up for failure, but you also don't want to just set really low hanging fruit goals that you can very easily hit. And then you just feel like you've accomplished it and you're good, So I think there's a happy medium. And I would just consider that when you're setting these two. Now, so say you set your goals for whatever categories you want. Again, mine were spiritual, physical, personal, family, and business. To actually go about achieving these, again, I would do 1 or 2 per category. First of all, put them down somewhere. Visuals help so much. So whether it's notes on your phone, it's a post-it you're going to see every day, it's a journal. I do kind of all of the above of this. I always have them in the notes on my phone. I also put them in my journal. Like that's where they're started out right now. That's what I did the other day when I was just kind of sitting with these and getting lists started. And then you need to keep them front of mind. So ideally, I did not review mine every day, but I've heard that as a tip too. And I'm going to try that this year. Just so like not a big dramatic thing, but when I do my morning prayer to just look at the list after so that it's front of mind. I'm reminded what I'm shooting for this year. And that's motivating. That keeps you on task and on track. I also would encourage you, as another tip, to break them down into mini goals or micro goals. Lots of ways you can do this. And this is why too, like I wouldn't make them a million per category because you ideally should do this for every single goal. Say we're back to the 50 pounds example. I want to lose 50 pounds by December 31st. You would want to break that up into months, and then you'd want to break that up into weeks. Now, there's other action steps that are going to go with that, right? Because you're not going to lose the weight just by thinking about it. So you're going to need to get on a nutrition plan or start incorporating workouts or work with somebody or whatever. But you are going to have micro goals that go along with it. Now, like say last year, one of my goals was to read 23 books for the year. Now I know for a fact, okay, previous years. So this is I'm not like always a voracious reader. I've totally gone through seasons where I realized, I think it was when I had the 2 little ones, that I was just not reading like at all. And I love reading. I wasn't reading fiction. I wasn't reading nonfiction. I don't know. I've probably always been reading nonfiction, but I go off and on with fiction because I get annoyed when I can't find something and when I start a book and have to put it down and whatever. But I think I've always enjoyed nonfiction books, even in that rotation, but still there have been times where I've been like, okay, I've read 3 books this whole year. Now, probably 2 years ago, I was realizing I was not reading that much and thought like, I can definitely bring this back. Like, I feel like I have no time, but I could do this. And last year I set the goal to read 23 books and I blew it out of the water. I probably read at least 50. It was more like I needed a goal to stop reading so much last year because it's like, was like neglecting other things to finish a book and staying up late, like reading all through the night, those kinds of things. Have I told you I'm an all or nothing person? Like, yeah, that's what happened here with that. But say that goal. Okay. Say I was setting the goal to read 24 books this year, which I'm not, but say that was the goal. I would want to break that down then to that's a pretty easy one to do because there's 12 months in the year. That's 2 books a month I have to read. So under personal, I'd write read 24 books. And then I would write down read 2 books a month. That's super easy to track. That's super easy to keep front of mind. You could go as far at the start of the year as assigning your 2 books to the month for the entire year if you already have a whole book like list that you want to get through. Or just that's kind of fun, the start of each month, like picking your books that you're going to, like, I'm going to read these 2. It helps keep us on track. Okay. And then from there, I would, like I said about the looking at your goals daily, which I didn't do, what I do already do and will continue to is to look at them quarterly. So January, February, March, end of March, checking in on your goals, end of April, May, June, checking in on your goals, end of June, and so on and so forth to see where you're at. See again what needs to be eliminated, what needs to be added, what you smashed out of the park, and you could up level. If you totally met all your personal goals for the year, or say like one of your spiritual goals was to read 2 spiritual books, 2 spiritual reading things, and you've already read them, you could change that. You could add something different. There's total flexibility in this. So I encourage you to at least look over these quarterly. All right. So without further ado, the best I got for the coming year. So like I said, I just spent a little quiet time in the morning doing this. I didn't do the personal yet. So that was the category that I was missing. I have a running bucket list of things that I want to do. I don't call it a bucket list, but I put essentially the exact same thing. Things to do before I die. It's probably the most boring list you've ever read. But for example, it's like make wine. What else is on there? Like things that were on there that I've done are like learn how to do sourdough, learn how to hand letter, whatever. And then many of these things I'm mediocre at, which leads me to actually, I'll talk about that in a second, probably what my personal will look like this year. But it's a very boring list, but I have a list of probably like at least 30 things on there. So I pull from there each year to make sure I'm like doing these things and learning things and having fun things to focus on. Quilting's on there. That is definitely not going to make it on for this year because I don't have a sewing machine currently. I gave mine to my niece. I do not have the time, energy, or like I will not have the time and energy with a newborn to learn to quilt. That's down the road. If anybody wants to teach me how to quilt, I would love that. Let's do it. I'll bring the coffee or the wine, whatever time of day it is. But that one's not going on personal this year. So, it can be fun things for that category. So I can't share that with you today because I have no idea what I'm doing there. But actually, I have a kind of an idea. But spiritual, I put daily scripture reading and reading 5 spiritual books. So this past year, I shared like what went really well for me was making sure I had daily silent prayer time and a daily rosary. And on the whole, those went well. So they don't need to be a goal anymore. That should just stay in the rotation. And then I can add different things in, have different goals. Physical, I did write on here to get back to my pre-baby weight. And I think it's attainable because I have pretty much an entire year to do it. And that's pretty much always been the benchmark for me. Is I've talked about this a lot on postpartum episodes, but that it feels like an uphill battle for me to lose fat while breastfeeding until about 9 months. And then 9 to 12, I start getting some traction. And about 12, I usually start feeling a little more like myself. This is baby number 4 and it might take longer, but I would love to end the year of 2024 feeling back to my normal weight range, ideally normal body fat range, but I'll still probably be breastfeeding right up to the end of the year, the Lord willing there. So, it is what it is. We'll see. But I did want you to know and be transparent that I put that on the list because I talk a lot about performance goals and I don't really have. The only other goal I put in there is to move daily. That might surprise you. I don't have other performance goals on there because the postpartum recovery takes a while. And with each subsequent baby, it takes longer and longer. So I'm not going to put a physical goal in there or a performance goal in there, like doing 5 pull-ups again or running 20 miles or whatever, because I don't know what the recovery is going to look like. And I don't want to put those kind of benchmarks on there. I do know that I can, lose fat while breastfeeding if I'm paying attention to it. So that did go on there. And again, in transparency of, I do talk a lot about performance and like, oh, aesthetics don't matter, but I do, prioritize getting back to ideal and healthy body weight and body fat too. And I've talked about this before, so I want to show you that I do practice what I preach of, when you're having babies on babies on babies, the compounding effect of the weight is difficult when you give a big time gap in getting it off. So I think it's a balance of wanting to get quote unquote the weight off, not as quickly as you can, but with some urgency, but also not, being a maniac and mistreating your body in the process, or, you guys know what I mean. So it is on a list for me as well as moving daily. I've got some business goals on there, and then family. I did write on here, which is funny because even since I wrote the list, I was like, oh, okay, I actually don't feel as bad about this anymore. But under family, I have weekly, not this is not the one, reading aloud more. And then weekly daily mass. Now, reading aloud more is not a great goal because it's not very specific. I need to say like daily read alouds. Actually, I did put in parentheses daily. So there you go, daily read alouds, and then weekly daily mass. Now, I was in a good groove of going to daily mass with the kids one day a week, not daily, one day a week. That was a big win for me. And it has since fizzled. I don't know why, actually. I have no excuse for it, but it has fizzled and I need to get back to it because I know with the newborn, it's just going to become more of an excuse for me to not do it. And I want to do it. So that's got to be in there. But the funny one of the more reading aloud daily is once I wrote this, I was in this was in my reflection about homeschooling. And I was like, you know what, Britt, like you never read aloud to them, blah, blah, blah. And I realized like, yes, I do every single day with morning time. It's just not always sit down, read a bunch of picture books and things like that. It's a lot more like we read science, we read catechism, like we do read aloud. So I am getting more intentional, even at recording with this, which is before the new year, with reading specific cute little board books with my 2-year-old and stuff like the Sandra Boynton ones. We like pulled those back out. We're like, oh yeah, you'll think these are funny now, that kind of thing. But I'm not beating myself up that much about this one because life is just changing in seasons, and turns out we do read to our kids. But yeah, and then you again might want to listen back to other episodes because I've had others that have been, I think I might have even had like a marriage category. And it's one of those things that I in no way think that we're doing things perfectly or that we've arrived in any of these things. But that once something is a routine or is a habit, they don't need to take up space on my list anymore. So, like, for example, there was a time a couple years ago where I realized we were not doing regular date nights and we wanted to have those in. So, under like family or spouse or whatever, we had weekly date nights in there and we had like a joint prayer thing. So that was when we started doing our theology nights one night a week and doing date nights most Saturday nights, unless one of us has like, that's what we do is Saturday nights at home date night, very occasionally, like twice a year right now, which could stand to go up, out of the house date nights. But, and then we find another night if like we have a girls' night or a guys' night or some other obligation. But like these things are already pillars in our lives now. We always have a weekly date night. We always, well, most days, pray the family rosary. I always, or whatever, like drink 80 to 100 ounces of water every day. So those don't need to be on the list. And that's the idea, is to challenge ourselves a little bit to grow in the areas we think are important or worth it, and make sure like it's even valuable to you. If you're just throwing it on the list because like, I don't know, everyone's reading, I'll throw like read books on there, but you don't personally love reading, or it fits your life better to listen to audiobooks sometimes or listen to podcasts sometimes like this in short snippets, that's fine. Like find something that does fit, that is exciting to you. I've also shared before that I try to make these goals, like especially the personal ones. Oh, that's what I was going to say about personal. I pull things from my list, right? That are random things I want to learn before I die, ideally. But I'm a huge starter and not a huge finisher. So there's a lot of things that I will do for 20 seconds and become mediocre at, and then move on to the next thing. Like I have super shiny object syndrome where, oh, shiny object, go over there. Okay, squirrel over there. I will walk in a Hobby Lobby and decide I'm going to all of a sudden make jewelry and buy all the stuff to make jewelry. And I make like half an earring and then I'm done and I'm on to the next thing. That's a fault of mine. So this year, I didn't write these down and I will. But in the personal category, I just want to get better at a couple of the things that I have going. Like I do have basic knowledge, ability, whatever you want to call it, for hand lettering. So that was on my goal list a couple years ago. But it's like very, very probably my 6-year-old will pass me soon in it. Okay. So I could stand to focus more on that, designate more time to that. I could, I know how a couple variations of sourdough. I want to get into more like interesting loaves, cuter scoring, that kind of stuff. So I am looking to enhance the things I've already taken on more than just add. All right. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was fun to you today. I always have fun being with y'all. And next episode, we're going to talk about 5 tips for getting back on track after the holidays. It is going to be our first episode of 2024. So seems appropriate. All right. I will talk to you then. Have a great rest of your day. And also don't forget, if you are looking into what your plan is going to be for 2024, to go check out all of those options on my website. All right. Talk to you next time.